Hello students, after completing Unit 5 Invention and English, let's start with Unit 6 Shadow and Light. Now, are we studying English or science? We studied about invention and now we are studying about shadow and light. You know the basic definitions of light. Light is something that makes things visible, and the electromagnetic definition or radiation, that all you have studied in science. But in normal terms also we know what is light. And about shadows are made by blocking light. Light rays travel from a source in straight lines, and if something solid or an opaque object gets in the way, it stops light rays from traveling through it, and this results in an area of darkness appearing behind the object. That is shadow. Now in Unit 6, we are going to study about shadow and light, but not scientifically, but like a poem is there, which is really fun and entertaining. Let's start with Activity 1, which is for your studies, but it's more like a fun activity. Activity 1 is poem My Shadow by Robert Louis Stevenson. Now, before explaining this whole poem, I would like you to read the poem and sing along with me. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He's very, very like me from the hills up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow, not at all like proper children, which is always very slow. For he sometimes shoots up taller like an India rubber ball, and he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. One morning very early, before the sun I was up, I rose and found the shining dew on every buttercup. But my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepy head, had stared at home behind me and was fast asleep in bed. Now, wasn't this fun? Let's read and understand the poem stanza by stanza. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. Now, here the poet has thought of himself as a small child, and he has a little shadow which goes in and out with him. Like if you are at home, you will have your shadow, and when you move out of the home, your shadow will come with you. And what can be the use of him is more than I can see. Now the poet is thinking, like, what is the use of shadow? He sees there is no use of him, but he is saying that the use of shadow is maybe it is more than I can see. I cannot see any use, but maybe it's there. It's more than what he can understand. He is very, very like me from the hills up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. Now, we all know our shadow looks like us. It's not that I am too thin, but my shadow will look fat, or vice versa. So, from hills up to the head, the shadow looks similar to the poet. And when he jumps into the bed, if the source of light is behind him, the shadow will jump into the bed before the poet. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow, not at all like proper children, which is always very slow. Now, you know how shadows work. If you are near the source of light, your shadow will be cast long, and if you are away, it will get smaller. Or during daytime, if the sun is just above your head, your shadow will be almost like just near your footsteps. But So that's what the poet is thinking, that the shadow grows in a funny way, which is not like proper children, which is not like regular children. When a child, the rate of child growth, it is very slow. And we know a baby does not just grows one day and next day he shrinks, or children grow gradually, but the shadow does not grow like it. For he sometimes shoots up taller like an India rubber ball, and he sometimes gets so little that there is none of him at all. So previously said that the shadow grows in a funny way. So why is it funny? Because sometimes he shoots up taller like an India rubber ball. India rubber ball is a rubber ball which bounces high. So sometimes, just like the ball bounces high, the shadow also shoots up tall. And sometimes he gets so little that there's none of him at all. The shadow is so small that you cannot just see, or you feel like there's no shadow at all. One morning very early, before the sun I was up, I rose and found the shining dew on every buttercup. So the poet talks about an incident where one morning he wakes up before the sun. Before the sun means before the sun wakes up, before the sunrise. When the poet wakes up, he rose and found the shining dew. Dew means the what droplets that you find during early morning or sometimes during evening when there is the cold weather, or that moisture do you find that you find in the atmosphere. So he found those shining droplets, that shining dewdrops on every buttercup. Buttercup is a plant, buttercup are a plant of type of flowers. But my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepy head, had stayed at home behind me and was fast asleep in bed. So the poet talked about the incident when he went out before sunrise and found dewdrops on every buttercup. But the shadow did not come with him during that time, during the before sunrise. Why? Because the poet thinks that his little lazy little shadow was like an errant sleepy head. Errant means utter, who total sleepy head. Sleepyhead means you can get like someone who is in need for sleep, who wants to sleep. So the poet says that when he went before sunrise, the shadow did not come with him because he is lazy and who is total sleepy. That shadow stayed at home behind him and was fast asleep in bed. The poet was awake and he went out of the house, but the sun had not risen, so the shadow also didn't come with him and he was fast asleep in bed. So after the poem, it's time for meanings. First word is India rubber. India rubber, if you look at the definition, is a type of rubber which got its name by, there's a history behind it. But for easy meaning, you can write it is natural rubber. Then there is dew. Dew are the drops of water that form on the ground and other surfaces outside during the night, or as I said, after late evening or before morning. Then buttercup. Buttercup is a small bright yellow wildflower. Next word is errant. It is complete or utter. It is used in a bad sense. It is used with some bad adjective. It cannot, complete is a good word, but errant is used for negative words. And the last word is sleepyhead, which all of you are some or the other time during classes. A person, especially a child who is tired and looks as if they want to sleep. You have to write these meanings in your rough book. Now, let's do activity 2. Work with a group or partner to write the numbers of the lines from the poem that match each meaning. You might need more than one number for a meaning. Now you do not have a group or partner, so I'm your partner. Let's start with the first one. The shadow is similar to the poet. Now, in the poem, line number 5 is he is very, very like me from the... So, when you say he is like me, that is, the shadow is similar. Next, children don't get tall quickly. It is line number 11 and 12. Not at all like proper children, which is always very slow. Here, the word tall is not used, but the way children grow, that has been given. So it is 11 and 12. Then some balls bounce very high. We are not talking generally about balls here, but India rubber ball, that specific ball was talked about, and it was used with the words like which shoots up taller like India rubber ball. So it is line number 13 and 14. Next we have the shadow shrinks. Shrinks, it gets too small. So the line is line number 15, and he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. It is line number 15 and 16. Next we have the poet doesn't think the shadow is useful. It comes in the beginning only that what can be the use of him is more than I can see. It's more than what I think. I think there is no use of it. So it is line number 3 and 4. And the last one is the poet sometimes wakes before dawn. Dawn, you know, is early morning. And it is 17 and 18. One morning, very early before the sun, I was up. So that was activity 2. In a funny way, the poet describes something that everyone has seen. We all have seen shadows, right? We all know that our shadow cannot be seen when there is no light. But is it true that the shadow was asleep while the poet was outside awake in the morning? What else could the poet imagine happened to his shadow? Now, this is your activity. Work with your group or partner to make a new story about where the shadow goes when you can't see it. Students, you have to imagine. You are not doing this with group or partner. You have to do this by yourself. Think about something. Give your story a title. Make your poem rhyme or not, but try to think of a new idea that no one else has thought of. The activity goes on like the title of my story is blank. One morning, very early, before the sun, I was up. I... ... Continued. But my shadow, what did you do? And what did your shadow do? Share your story with your classmates. Which story was the most unusual? We are not going to share it, but you will enjoy writing the story by yourself as you enjoyed this poem. We'll continue with activity 3 in the next class.